Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for Unscripted. This one is going to be about the Kentucky Rural-Urban Exchange. I'm Emily. I am the artistic producer of Actors Theater. I use they, them, theirs. And about to bring in our guest. And also, before we start, I want to remind everybody that any donations that go to Unscripted are shared with La Casita. La Casita is a grassroots nonprofit located here in Louisville, supporting families in the Latinx community while providing a foundation for systemic change with long-term effects. So anything you can offer in support today will also be shared with La Casita. Okay, can we bring everybody on? Hi, all. So I think we'll start with some introductions. And again, this is a group of Kentucky Rural-Urban Exchange folks. Savannah, could I go to you first if you just want to share a little bit about RUX, which is that okay to refer to for short? And then a little bit about you and your story, and then we'll go around and do that for everybody.
Great. Emily, thank you so much for having us and Actors Theater. It's an honor to be with you today. And it's always a pleasure to spend some time with my friends across the state who've helped to guide RUX for the last many years. So my name is Savannah Barrett. I use she, her pronouns, and I work as the exchange director for a national organization called Art of the Rural. And Art of the Rural and Apple Shop founded the Kentucky Rural-Urban Exchange 7 years ago. So I continue to direct that work in partnership with folks at Apple Shop. I'm coming to you today as a 12th generation Kentuckian. I grew up about 80 miles from Louisville in the community of Grayson Springs, where my family's been for about 200 years, and where I currently steward about 6 acres of my family home place, but also live right here in Louisville in the South End in the Beachmont neighborhood. And I'm really proud of that, I guess, dual experience of having a deep relationship in rural and urban Kentucky, feeling very much at home in both. And just want to invite all of you who are watching today to think about all of the kinds of places you love in Kentucky and hold that complexity with you as we talk through what we've been doing. So welcome to RUX, y'all, and thanks for having us.
Thank you, Savannah. All right, who should we go to next? Ada, will it be okay to go to you?
Yeah, of course. Hello, folks out there in Facebook live stream land. I feel like I have been on some streamed events, but it's kind of like, who do you say hello to? Everyone. My name's Ada Smith. I live and work in Letcher County, Kentucky. Wrightsburg is the county seat. And like Savannah was saying, I grew up in this community. My family's been in this community a long time. And I currently work at Apple Shop as our institutional development director, but will be leaving my job at the end of the year, trying to figure out what's next, but have been a part of the RUX network and world since it began. I started as a participant. My coworker Josh May had helped get things going with Savannah, and after 2 years of participating, I joined the steering committee and helped co-facilitate RUX for a couple years. And it's been a really joyful experience for me and something that's really pushed me to grow in new ways. And just better understand this whole big state that we're in, which, you know, having spent a lot of time in other places, I just want to say that Kentucky is the best. I mean, like the whole state. And so if you're from this state or if you live in this state, you should be so proud to be here because we are doing so much great work. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Ada. All right, Gerry, can I go to you next?
Yeah. I was just going to roast Ada a little bit. I was like, Ada's not on Facebook. I was like, yeah, anyways. I'm glad to be here. I'm Gerry James, and I run the Explore Kentucky initiative and the Waterman series. And I have participated first was a participant of RUX, and then became a part of the steering committee. And it's just been a great journey for me. You know, I'm a transplant. I don't have the roots and heritage like some of the other folks, like Savannah. 200 years, Savannah. That's awesome. But I'm a transplant, and this place has become home to me. You know, I've been here for over a decade, and you know, as a military brat, traveling all around, you know, being able to call someplace a home for a decade, that's really wonderful to me. And a lot of the reasons why I was able to call it home was because of the folks that are in this box right here that you're looking at right now. They've become my friends and family, and made me like want to stay here. And so a lot of my work that I do is centered around environmental literacy and outdoor recreation. So Kentucky has 120 counties full of like awesome natural resources, and so I've tried to get people out on it for ecotourism, economic development, but also for public health. And then my role within RUX has been helping a lot with developing the communication tools, which has been just wonderful to work with folks like Richard and Alex Mattingly and Emmy and so many other people. And but yeah, that's me.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, can I go to Ivy next and then Richard?
Absolutely. Hi, y'all. It's really great to be here with you today. And like others, I think, have been saying or alluding to, it's always great to be on a call with our RUX people and get to see y'all's faces. So I'm Ivy Brashear, and like Savannah, I have really deep roots in Kentucky, and specifically in Eastern Kentucky. My family is from Perry County, and we are still living on land there that we have had deeds to for a long time, and we have pretty deep roots there. I have pretty deep roots there, and I'm really proud to be from there. But I am living now in Lexington, and you know, also like Savannah, I feel like that duality of rural and urban that I sort of occupy is really interesting, and I think has served me in some ways, and also complicated my relationship to place in some other ways. But, you know, I love this state, and I love the places that I've called home in this state. And RUX has really taught me a lot about what that means. And currently right now I'm working as the Appalachian Transition Director at the Mountain Association that's based in Berea. I'm also a freelance journalist. I've written for several different online outlets. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Okay, Richard.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. It's so good to see all these people. I feel like everyone said this now already, but I'm going to say it again. It's always so nice to just see everyone's face and be able to spend some time with y'all. My name is Richard Young. I use he, his, him pronouns. I am in Fayette County in Lexington. Like many folks on this call, my family's been in Kentucky for a while, although we don't have a definitive generation number. It changes depending on who in my family you talk to. Some people say 3, some people say 10, some people say numbers that don't have any basis in reality. So it really depends on who you talk to. But my family's actually kind of new to Lexington. I've only been here for maybe about 40 or 50 years, maybe even less than that. But I've had family in Covington and in Boyle County and out there in Louisville. So I live and work here in Lexington. I moved away for a while and came back, and then was thinking about moving away again and got trapped. And one of the many things that trapped me here is RUX, and I use trap in the most loving and endearing way. I've said this story many times to people, but I've had a lot of opportunities to leave, and RUX is really one of the things that has one of the top 2 or 3 things that's kept me in Kentucky. The relationships that I built through RUX, the relationships to all these people, and a lot of people that aren't on the call. and also I think just like really an understanding and identity of what it means to be a Kentuckian. I don't think I've really felt that, despite my family being here for a really long time. So yeah, I in Lexington, I run a civic education organization called Civic Lex. We help folks understand how to get involved in city government, and are working with city government to develop resident engagement processes that are better. And by better, I mean actually, work to some degree. So we do a lot of work. I just call it local democracy work, or civic education, one of the two, depending on who I'm talking to. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. My background is also as an artist. I went to school for double bass performance, so I have a degree in music performance, and also have really dramatic lighting due to this maple tree in my front yard. So every now and then it'll look like I'm giving a monologue or I'm haunted, which feels appropriate for Halloween coming up in a little bit. But yeah,
It's theatrical lighting.
Very theatrical lighting due to this maple tree.
All right, well, thanks. Richard, were there more? Did I cut you off?
No, that was it. I don't know.
Well, this is an amazing group, y'all. Thank you so much. Savannah, I was reflecting that you were actually one of the first people I met when I moved here, now I think almost 4 years ago. So how lucky is that? Because I have gotten to follow you in your work, whether you knew I was always doing that or not. And when I got the Living with Complexities case study and read that, I was just so excited to be able to have this conversation as part of our Unscripted series. So thank you. So I'm gonna go to a first question, and as Erica shared in the chat, if anyone tuning in today has questions that you want to ask of this group of folks, please just share those, and we'll get those in too. Okay, so I'm gonna start with what was the impulse behind starting the Kentucky Rural Urban Exchange, which is now celebrating 7 years? And could you all share some of your experiences?
I can just jump in first and share a little bit about how the idea came about, and it was really pretty simple. I was carrying around a lot of feelings and thoughts about how it just like kept coming up in different regions of the state that I lived in or spent time in, that like folks would describe another part of the state and say, but that's not the real Kentucky. And it's just, I found it so frustrating and upsetting how many people it left out of the equation. Then I met Josh May, who was working at Apple Shop at the time. He and I were fast friends and shared a lot about our common experiences. Me growing up on the edge of Western Kentucky in Grayson County, and him in Salyersville. Also, irrefutably a Kentuckian, 10 generations or so deep, and had similar experiences. And there is a sort of culture in some parts of Kentucky where folks, for bona fides, where folks just try and like toss around belonging where people do a lot of gatekeeping, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it's a way, sometimes it comes from a point of pride frequently, of being really proud of the region that you're from, but it can also leave a lot of folks out. So we were just interested in this whole idea and how to start bringing people together across the state who had been kept apart, and I think that's part of it too. It's not incidental that this has happened, right? Folks have been kept apart because it has profited some for them to be separated in such ways. And then there was also a particular opportunity at that time. So we're talking about 2014, in the middle of Obama's second term, long before many people were talking about rural urban issues. What we were talking about a lot in Kentucky was economic transition, because in Eastern Kentucky and in the early days of the Western Kentucky coal fields transition, folks were starting to realize that it was never going to be the same for the coal industry. And that had already happened in really meaningful ways with the tobacco industry and with auto manufacturing and union manufacturing in general across the state. And so what Josh and I talked a lot about was like, Well, hell, no matter what your economic tie to place is, what your people have been doing for generations, it's not viable for our generation. So we all have had to move around a bunch. And I think it's brought up a lot of questions about identity and belonging too, just all of those economic catalysts. So we recognize that as an opportunity because there were a lot of folks from Eastern Kentucky who'd moved west to work in the surface mining in Western Kentucky. There were a lot of folks from all over rural Kentucky that have moved to Lexington and Louisville and Northern Kentucky. And there were folks, migrating around for agriculture who frequently aren't seen as migrant workers. So we just knew that there was an opportunity to bring folks together around this question because maybe some of the people who had lived in multiple regions could begin to translate value back and forth. So those were all of the things we were holding. And the idea was really simple. As our friendship grew and the relationship between Art of the Rural and Apple Shop as organizations grew, we just kept meeting people that reminded us of our other friends. So, I met John Haywood, an artist and musician in Eastern Kentucky. And I was like, oh, he would really dig this guy, Jesse Lucas, that runs a media company in Louisville. I wish they would meet. Or when I met Jenny Williams, who's a chef, a home chef, and ran a cooking show at Apple Shop. It's like, oh man, she should meet the folks at Wiltshire. They're just peas in a pod, So it started just like, it's too bad that these people don't know each other. They could do great stuff across the state. Why don't we just get them together and see how it goes? So the basic idea was we thought we could host a couple of meetings a year, and in 5 years have been hosted in every region of the state. And we thought we could reach 150 folks through some kind of leadership program in that time. And, we reached about 250 in those years. We've been in 10 host communities now in every region of the state. So that's how we got started. And then I'll pass it to everyone else to share some of their experiences in Rex.
All right, thank you, Savannah. Let's open it up. Ada, Ivy, Richard, Gerry, does anyone want to share some of your experiences with Rux? Oh, and Ashley's joining.
Hey
guys,
guys, sorry
Ashley.
I'm a little late. Just trying to get on here.
No worries at all.
Sorry.
I'll just jump in really fast or quick.
Yeah.
My experience with Rux was funny. As I got into it, and I've told the story quite a few times. I was in the Kentucky art. I was visiting the Kentucky tourism office or state parks, which is in the old tower in Frankfurt that got blown up. And so I was there for a meeting, and then I saw this sign on the door next to the office at Kentucky Arts Council. And so I had this idea about doing some projections of outdoor landscapes on buildings and stuff like that. And so I was trying to see if they had any grants or whatever. So I just barged in the door, and it's an office building, so they're not used to civilians, just citizens just barging in there without an appointment. And everybody looked up what's this brother doing in here? But then there was one person that was really nice to me, and it was this Sarah Schmidt, and she said, come here. And she took me in the wing, and she was like, look, she kind of said they're not just used to you being people barging in here. And she gave me some resources. And then a few weeks later, she told me about this Rux thing and had invited me to join it and stuff like that. And she heard about a little bit what I do, Explore Kentucky, my journalism and stuff like that. And so that's kind of how I got into it. It was a fluke. If I wouldn't have went to that meeting that day, I might not have been in it. So it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. Anyone else want to jump in?
I can talk about how I got brought into rock. So I'm one of I feel like this basically everyone in this call I feel has these very, very deep roots with Rux that go back for a long time. And for me, I feel like I came on board, I guess it was after the first year, Savannah, was that right? I don't know how I don't remember this, the clear timeline. but I came on board as a steering committee member, so I never actually went through the program itself. I was never in the cohort, and I came in. I was in a really different place in my life. I had a completely different job. I was doing a lot of different things, and I met Savannah and Josh at this sort of convening that the Kentucky Arts Council had. I think that's how we met. Is that how we met? Yeah, I think that's how we met. And so she was like, "Hey, you should come learn more about this Rux thing." So I was like, "All right." So I drove down to Whitesburg with another person, another sort of OG Ruxer from Lexington, Tanya Torp, and we had a really great ride down there and really connected. I think in a way, like we lived a couple blocks away from each other and had never really connected in that deep of a way. And you're locked in a car 3 hours with someone. Well, 6 hours, 3 hours down, 3 hours back. You get to know people better, and so it was really, I think, like even before I was like actually immersed in Rux, I was actually kind of having this experience that I felt that now I'm like retrospect. I'm just realizing this right now as I'm rambling. I was like, oh, that was kind of like a preamble to Rux in that like I was like stuffed in this car with someone for 3 hours and we're just talking and finding the places that we agree and finding the places that we disagree and like moving through uncomfortable conversations and talking about the shared values that we have and the things that we love. I think that now I'm realizing, and then sort of the experience of that day down in Whitesburg, so much has changed so much in my life, I think, and has really changed how I approach my work and has led to some really, really, I don't know, just some significant changes in literally every aspect of my life, and is also led right to some of the best friends that someone can ask for, and people that that will always have your back. So yeah, does that answer your question? I don't know. I was just rambling.
No, that's great. That's great. Ada, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted, one of the things that I remember really early on as a participant, I've also gotten known for a little bit is, well, first off, we went to Paducah and we stayed at the Hotel Metropolitan, which is a historically a old school Black hotel that had been really important during the time that there was, this Chitlin circuit. And so like Louis Armstrong had stayed there, Cab Calloway, all these like amazing musicians. And so there was like these great pictures on the wall. The rooms were all decorated very differently. It was like a museum. It was a hotel. There was a woman there that ran the hotel who made us an amazing dinner. Just like the level of hospitality was just immediate, right? And I felt like I wasn't surprised about that. We're Kentuckians. I feel like when people know you're coming, they make you a meal, they put you up, they're sweet to you. But I really hadn't spent that much time in Western Kentucky. And so I think I just a little bit didn't know what to expect. And what was also crazy is there was a Oktoberfest happening. Landee, early participant, was having an Oktoberfest. So like we were staying at this beautiful historic hotel that had been Black owned. And then like went downtown and there was like this Oktoberfest happening where like there were some people dressed in like whatever those are called, like German whatever Lederhausen or whatever they're called, and like people drinking like huge things of beer, right? And just like the mixture of even in this place, Paducah, that was so different, right? And that like the stories we were hearing at the Hotel Metropolitan versus what we were experiencing at the Oktoberfest, we were in the same town, but they weren't the same experiences. And I think it really, when I kind of like Richard, when I think about it now, I'm like, that's exactly what Rux does, is it brings you to a place and kind of like very quickly explodes both your preconceptions, but also even how it might represent itself to different people because you're kind of coming in as a cross section. And then as participants, like at the end of that gathering, I was like, what are we doing? What's the point of Rux? I don't understand. And other people were like, this has been really beneficial. Over a year, I got to see X, Y, and like really loved the opportunity to not have such a hardcore purpose, but to actually experience a place, experience each other, listen to each other, see things, learn. And so I just wanted to highlight that weekend as a very, for me, formative part of this thing that Brooks talks about, people, place, and partnership, and how important it's been to see the way Rux works in a place. And the different mechanisms of which it uses to make sure that we see what Kentucky is, we see the similarities, but we also see that there are a lot of differences in this state. This state is very complicated, and that's what we need to know.
Thank you,
I just
Ada.
want to say very briefly that was the one and only time that we did a Rux during an Oktoberfest. It was a terrible idea.
It was a great idea. No, it was bad, and it was really fun.
It'd be better to have like Rux reunion during an Oktoberfest, not like, when you're trying to accomplish things.
All right, I was gonna have Ashley introduce herself, but we lost her. So when she's back, we'll do that. Ivy, was there anything that you wanted to share about your experience with Rux?
No, I obviously agree with what other folks have said about how Rux just sort of brings you together and puts you in a space and in a room with all these different kinds of people, and you're kind of stuck there with them in like the most loving way possible, as Richard said. And so you have to sort of build your way out of there by building trust with people and learning these places that you may have been to before, but you just are now seeing really for the very first time. My similar experience to the one that Ada's talking about and being in Paducah was when we went to Bowling Green for the first time. And I had lived in Bowling Green as a student at WKU for a year and did not know anything about Bowling Green, it turns out. And going back there and being able to experience this place through people who have been there their entire lives, and they, Western Kentucky is their homeland. And, it just really opened my eyes to this place. And I think, I've had that experience in all the places that we've been, really, where, I may have been to these places before and just didn't really know what they really were. And it's interesting for me, like I think a lot about the complexities of Eastern Kentucky because that's where I'm from and that's my work. And, my work is about narrative shifting of this place that oftentimes, a lot of false and misleading stories are told about this place of Eastern Kentucky. And so I feel like I focus so much on that, the other parts of the state, I just was sort of like not giving them that same credence. And I think that's the thing that Rux has really done for me, is like helped me to appreciate this state and each individual place within this state for its individuality, but also how it's connected to everything else.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. We have a fan of Rux who already wants to hear about the future. But before we get to that, I know there's a lot of, as you all have shared already, but a lot of, developing leadership as part of this experience and intercultural competencies. And what is, and anyone can share, what is Rux's sort of philosophy around those? And then how has that affected your work and your approach to leadership?
I can try to kick us off.
Thanks, Ada.
Yeah. I think that, again, because Art of the Rural and Apple Shop really got this going, I think, Savannah and Josh were just so grounded and schooled in culture being a really big part of how change happens, right? That I think even beyond the arts and cultural world, right, people talk about policy change only being a result of culture change. Like when we see, what you're talking about, Richard, like civic work that is actually helpful to people, it's because there's already been a huge amount of work done in the social cultural realm to get residents and a populace to a certain place. And so I think that to me, it was never a mistake of Josh and Savannah's that when we got together, it's like some of the things we're doing were dancing together, doing story circles, going to performances. And yes, even though Oktoberfest were a very specific thing, it was going to festivals. Like, how does a town present itself? What are the places that cultural workers and artists gather? Like when we were in Lexington, the Lyric Theater was one of our main partners, and being in that space in that building, Ashley had been working there at the time, having these cultural centers as often some of the key hosts to a community, I think really brought a different type of introduction to a place. I mean, we often were, talking to visitors bureaus and tourism groups as well. But, I think from my experience, artists, musicians, cultural workers really kind of see a different fabric of a community. And when it's their job to introduce a place to you, they're often thinking about like, what are things that people don't see as often? And so I would just say there are some like, for how lax it can maybe feel as a participant at Rux, there's a lot of very clear instructions about, as a host community or over a weekend, what are the things we want to make sure are highlighted? What do we want to push a host community to do? What things do participants? We're like asking them to share more deeply. This is not just about some networking opportunity on some shallow, like we're all in a hotel conference room, but really actually having to experience things with each other, taking walks together to discuss really hard issues. We went into a beautiful cave in Western Kentucky, right? For people that were up for that. But what does it mean to actually experience a place and not, again, just sit in one space the whole time? And so sometimes that means we're literally in Covington. We were invited to spend the night in homeless shelter. And that was a complicated experience of what did it mean for us to be in that shelter for a night? Did it displace people or not? What kind of experiences did we glean from being there? And we had debates internally about whether that was the right decision. And yet what was clear is that the people in Covington had identified this as a really important issue in their community. And we, sorry, my dogs.
I thought that was my dog, Ada. Do you want me to pick up, or do you want to keep going?
Go on. I don't think they're done.
I think if I could finish it, Ada said it for that. That's an important issue in Covington that they wanted us to experience and wanted to bring up with us and raise in this conversation. And for a lot of us that felt like we were maybe coming into a space where we could have been displacing folks or come in with this like sort of uncomfortable feeling, that's what that community wanted. And I think that when we're talking about, the part of your question was about leadership. And I think, most leadership programs, right? It's just like a bunch of people that look like me, that are dressed fancier than me, and, have like pomade in their hair. I don't know if they have pomade, but, some sort of product with like a well-combed hair, and people are taught these very like sort of superficial lessons about how to be a good leader and how to rise above challenges and stuff like that. And I think, the leadership aspect of Rux, and, I know we're going to get into into talking about distributed leadership, but I think at the core, right, it's about building the kind of leadership that we want in Kentucky. And right, like that we want people that understand place and understand that, while I might have an opinion about your place, your opinion of your place is something I need to listen to before I jump in with my opinion. And, I think it's a very different, very, in a lot of ways, like very radical approach to what leadership is. And I want to have someone else speak more about the distributed leadership approach, but I think that's a really important aspect of it.
If I could add one.
I think.
Go ahead, Gerry.
Oh no, I'll be brief. I was going to say it's a different leadership structure for me because I have an Air Force background, so we're in the Air Force, so it's very like rigid chain of command type thing, and you don't jump your chain of command, you actually get in trouble. I actually get fussed at for talking to like a colonel, and like colonel was like, "Did you talk to the master sergeant first?" And I was like, "Well," anyways. So like, but it's just a different structure, and it's kind of cool because it makes everyone kind of like equal, and you feel comfortable because like in the military, like the type of chain of command, it's needed, but sometimes it makes you feel uncomfortable about going directly to people to talk about different issues or solving things. And so it's awesome, and I love it, and I wish that a lot of other entities would adopt it, because like everyone, no matter like what level of education, how many years you've been a part of a company, everyone has something to share, and I think this model makes it more open to doing that.
What I wanted to jump in with is actually, I think, made stronger by what you said, Gerry, because it's the long and the short of what Rux is that we believe that connection is leadership, and that like true leadership is measured by your ability to deeply connect with others and to build from that connection. And the way that we have learned to do that is to ask all of those in our cohort and all of those in our leadership to come and have really vulnerable and honest conversations about what it means to be a Kentuckian for them, but also to listen to other people, and more importantly, to listen to everyone else's experience of that. And what we have found, I think, is that no matter who you are and where you're coming from and how sure-footed you were in your identity when you started, or how like lost you felt, that as that sense of identity is eroded and deconstructed by all of the other stories, what replaces it is a really complex, nuanced, literate sense of what it means to be a Kentuckian. That means like you can no longer discount someone else as being a part of it. And it's that expansiveness, I guess, that is really our approach to leadership development. Like we do teach skills, but that's not the point. We do networking, but that doesn't matter if it's, if it's shallow, if it doesn't connect people and communities for the long run.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And clearly meaningful. As just by how you all are so connected to each other. Okay, I'm going to go on to my next question, which is about the currency of connection framework. And so what I had written and thought is, of course it's like so strange, and yet so clearly we have a need for that. And I think the vastness of our state and the complexities have you all shared as part of that. But could you share more about the currency of connection framework and how you have applied it?
What I can just really quick talk a little bit about the framework, just the brass tacks of it, which, I first just want to say very Rux-ish, is that the Rux has changed and grown as it has gone. And so it's not like this framework is what we started with. It's that over years of doing this work, we got much clearer about what was working and what wasn't working. And so it's been a very evolving organization, an evolving process. And yet, I think I said this earlier, but the, three main pillars of it are people, place, and partnership. And I think that is done through selecting a cohort of Rux participants that spend 2 years together. And over those 2 years, they're experiencing 6 different host communities. And those host communities are, again, rural, they're urban, they're sometimes suburban, they're places in different parts of the state, different subregions of the state. And so, I think the overall goal is, as Savannah was saying, to get to shared values around where we're headed as a state, what do we all value, to think about accountability to one another that is in this cohort and leading this work, and to think about what best practices are used throughout the state and how can we grow those to be a part of many activities in this state, and not even just within Rux. Like, how can we take these best practices and bring them to our own work or the networks we may be in that are not Rux? So I think that gets to like the gist of what the currency of connection, and when we say that, what we mean.
Anyone else wanted to share on that? And I can also move us to the next question. Richard?
I would just like to point out that I would just like to also mention that on the Rux website there is a handbook and a set of case studies that Ivy and I wrote the case studies handbook. Is a large group creation. Savannah has some paper copies there. I've got some on that shelf behind me. They're really helpful for understanding this framework, and particularly the case studies, I think, really shows the impact that that this program's had on folks all across the state, and in a lot of different ways, and across that framework that Ada was talking about. So, those are up for free. I would really encourage anyone going and accessing those. Yeah.
All right, great, thank you. And we just shared the link too, so people can find that. Okay, so let's go to the next question, which we need some time for, which very much has to do with our state and our people right now. So we are currently in an uprising. We have been, we still are. We have more news now with the continuation of the injustice for Breonna Taylor. And how is this moment, the Black Lives Matter movement, how is that intersecting with you and your work and the work of Rux?
I guess I'll chime in because I've been. I don't want to use the term on the ground. I want to use like some like ebonics. I've been out in the trenches, out in the streets, like covering what's going on, and it's an interesting time for me because I forgot to mention in my intro, and I always flub my intros. I get nervous about them because you're talking about yourself and you don't want to be like, I don't know, conceited. But I have like a journalism background, and so like typically like my journalism career, like in college, I did like, a lot of hard news, feature writing, and stuff like that. But then after college, I just decided to use my journalism, output to write feature stories about outdoor environmental issues and stuff. And so like typically like really happy stuff, profiles of people. But then this year, I just started covering because I live in Frankfurt, the anti-lockdown COVID-19 lockdown rallies, because it's right up the street from me. And so I just started covering what was going down. And I was on CNN earlier this year, when the militia group hung Andy Bashir in effigy, and then that kind of movement segued to the BLM racial injustice, uprising that's happened, and it's kind of crazy for me that I never expected for Kentucky to be like in the epicenter of it. Just never, because I feel like just living in the state, Black folks tend to be out of sight, out of mind. And so it was important for me to put down like what I was doing and be out in the streets, documenting, trying to get trying to get people's stories, trying to learn, try to help educate people. Just that's what I was trying to do. That's what I've been doing. And also, like, journalism is a very white profession, and like, for example, I was out in the streets like last weekend, and out of the hundreds of journalists, I would say there was probably over 100 journalists from all around the country: New York Times, CBS, Deutsche, Al Jazeera. I could count on my hands how many like Black journalists I saw. And that kind of bothered me, because it's like, this is kind of like a movement, our movement, and who's telling the story. And quite often, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling too, I'm just kind of, this is unscripted, so I hope I can talk from the heart. But kind of like what bothered me a little bit about some of the coverage, and like why I felt we need like more diversity in it and more Black folk covering it, is because, in journalism school, and Ivy probably knows this too very well, if they're just saying, if it bleeds, it leads. That's the first thing that I remember broadcast journalism 101 class, and that's kind of like how this is being covered. I feel besides, and I want to shout out to our local folks like the Courier Journal. They are doing a really good job, but people are focused, national media outlets are focused on if someone lights a trash can on fire, stuff like that. And like, they're not understanding, like, literally there are Black women in Louisville leading these protests that are keeping the city from going in chaos. They're the ones telling people like, hey, like, we're not gonna be about that life. We're gonna do this. We're gonna keep focus and move toward these specific goals. And it's just been awesome to see that and document that, and also see like how journalism is changing and the coverage is changing when you add the live streamers to it. That's been like a really pivotal thing. Is I don't think there's ever been a protest, uprising, whatever, where you can like be at home and you could be sitting there like right there immersed in it with multiple freaking angles, so yeah. Can you go back to answer the question again? I want to make sure that I answer it properly.
No, I mean, I think you did answer, but it's, it's certainly like, I find that this is consuming everything, and as it should, and, and just wanting to hear, as you shared, how it's affecting you all. And it's certainly part of the intention of the work of Rux too. And so I know it's showing up in that work as well.
I think like it's important for Rux, because at the heart of what we're trying to do we're trying to connect people across the state. We're trying to get people to learn about each other. And, these issues, whereas the movement, is so focused on Louisville, but these issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial injustice, it's all across the state, so, and what's really been really special too with this movement for me is like rural people give like rural and Appalachian folks like, oh, they're, racist or backwards and stuff like that. And I'm always countering. I'm like, look, y'all, like, it's everywhere. The burbs, the city. And what you saw with this movement is like uprising of people, all across the state, no matter what the geography was. It was like, yo, we're going to march. We're going to march for support of Black lives. And that was like really, really special for me. I'm like places like Benton, Kentucky, Barberville, Corbin, which was like formerly like, it was a sundown town way back when. I mean, all these different, Graves County, and you're like, whoa, like out of nowhere, well, not out of nowhere, but seemingly out of nowhere. But these people are showcasing like, hey, like we're all about that life, and that was really beautiful for me to see.
Thank you for sharing that. And Ivy, you came up in that in your writing. Can you share about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, what Gerry is saying about this really being a statewide movement here in Kentucky is very accurate. We saw over this summer, there were BLM protest marches in support of BLM that happened in, I think, more than like 60 counties across the state. And that's not really something that, at least I have heard, has happened in other places. So it's really interesting to see that happening here. And as Gerry was pointing out, there are a lot of these stereotypes about rural Kentucky being the racist parts of the state. But to see these protests and these marches happening in those places really helps to flip that narrative a little bit and complicate it a little bit. And then, I did write a story about Corbin, as Gerry said, as a former sundown town. 100 years ago, Corbin is still well known for a racial expulsion that happened there, where a white mob forced all of the Black residents in Corbin onto trains and out of town. And that was 100 years ago. And so this summer they were, there's an initiative there that's called the Sunup movement in Corbin. And it's an initiative of local folks in Corbin and London area. And they are coming together to really reveal that history and bring that history into the modern day, because there's been a lot of effort in Corbin to hide that history over the years. A lot of embarrassment by people about that history and shame. So they're trying to bring that to light as a way to say, look, this is a part of who we are, and we need to recognize this as a way to reconcile this. And this summer, as all of these actions were taking place across Kentucky, they were a part of that as well. And there were several actions that happened there as part of that initiative, but also just as community members who wanted to say, we are here and we are standing up in support of Black lives. And that's important to us as modern day Corbin. That's important to us, and it's important to our future. And that's really what the other places were saying too, is that these are important issues to us here in this place. It doesn't matter if, we don't have very large Black populations. What matters is that we care about people. We care about the Black people who live here. We care about the Black people who live in Lexington, in Louisville, across the country. We care about this issue of police brutality. And we want to stand up and show our support for that. And I think it's been really powerful to witness. And some of those things that happened this summer, those are continuing. Those are ongoing efforts. A lot of them were led by young people in those places. A lot of them were led by young people of color in those places, who are, finding their voice through this movement in these rural spaces where they are going to be, at least for a little while. And they're going to have some influence about what happens in that community and how that community is seen, and who gets to participate in the future of that community, which is really important, I think. It's been incredible. As I said, the work is ongoing. It's going to be something to watch as we move forward.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else want to share any thoughts? All right, well, we are at our time, but I was going to ask one more question, which is about how can we individually apply what Rux does to further our own connection here? Like, what are the tips y'all can share, so that we can all be continuing to build connection?
Well, I'll jump in and say, have patience. This work of building connections, especially over, arbitrary lines of division and ways that we're divided, it takes a really long time, and it takes a lot of trust building. It takes just coming together as people and trying to see each other as people, and that's not typically something that happens overnight. So have patience is very good advice for this kind of connection building work.
Yeah, I'd add to that it won't ever end, right? Like there's no moment in which you're like, all right, connection's built, like got it. It's the whole thing's done, right? Like it is an ongoing process, and it's honestly like a way of life, which sounds like very pretentious and grandeur, but it's a way of life. You know, I think well, I talk about this a lot in the work that I do, you know, which is very much like what Ivy was just mentioning, was talk about sort of, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's really important to just start having conversations with the folks that live around you. So someone once taught me this activity, this very strange mental map, right? If you think of like a number pad, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you're 5, and where you live is 5. Do you know every single person by name on all of the numbers around you, right? So if your house or your apartment is in the middle, do you know every person that lives around you? And if you can't start there, like you have to start there, right? Like if you don't know the immediate people that are the closest to you, literally, physically, then it's very difficult to start branching out from there. So if people are wanting to know a way to start to bring this way of working and this way of living into their lives, start there. Talk to your neighbors. Ask them what are the things that are impacting their lives that they're happy with, or things that they're concerned about, right? What do they see as the problems in your neighborhood? What do they see as the problems in your community? And how can you all work to doing something about it together? Like it sounds it sounds really simplistic, right? Like, hey, how can we like work together to like get I don't know, speed bumps put in on our street, or like a sign for people to slow down while they're driving, right? These like stupid simple things, right? Like you start to build these connections and these fibers where you're like, oh, not only is this something, this is a shared value and a shared issue that we can connect over, but we're also participating in a civic action together, right? Like we're working towards change in our community. Well, and that change might be like tiny and nowhere near the kind of change that we need as a society, but it's a starting place from which you can grow. And one of my like dearest mentors here and friends here in Lexington, Andrea James, who is our first Black city councilwoman, and I've collaborated with a number of projects, and she's now working on opioid issues in the mayor's office. She taught me one of the best sayings that makes so much sense, right? It's like, how things are rooted is how they grow. And so if you don't root this work, and if you don't root the way that you're living this in these values, it's really hard for anything to grow and flourish. So, I mean, my advice is just talk to your neighbors, right? Have conversations with the folks that live immediately around you, and then go out from there.
I can jump in.
Sure, Savannah.
And just remind folks to check their biases and their assumptions about folks. And especially in this very divisive and polarized political moment, I think there's a temptation on both sides to stop short of even valuing people on the other side as having any contribution or worth to your existence. And I need you to stop and think about that. And think about whether or not you want to continue to live in a place where it's even possible to connect with people who are coming from a different experience. Because if you do, then you have to rearrange that assumption. And it is actually your responsibility in this moment to try and build relationships with people who are coming from the other place, so that maybe there's just a shot in hell of getting there together.
Sorry, now it's my dog's turn. Ada or Gerry, do you also want to share?
I don't know. Like, I think Savannah took like what I wanted to say from me, which is great because we all feed on each other. But when she said that about checking your biases, yeah, for sure. Like how, like this year, like part of me, like, having a science background and thinking about like how the people were protesting against the COVID-19, restrictions and stuff like that. A lot of folks were kind of going at folks on Facebook and saying these people are ignorant and stupid and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? Instead of me like just sitting at home, and let me go talk to these people. Let me go talk and take my phone and like live stream and talk to them, interview them. And I learned, a lot of different things. Not saying I'll agree with it, but at the root of things, there was a lot of uncertainty, like how are they going to feed their kid? How like their education, jobs, mental health, like so many different things. And I was able to draw that out of people and have those conversations. And I think that's what we all need to do, is to do that. I would encourage people to go downtown, and I think like from a big thing from Rux, I'm learned was the art of the pulling up into communities and learning about them. And I think like going back to the BLM, kind of conversation is like a lot of folks across the state are like, those people in Louisville, they're doing that thing. Pull up, go downtown, go to Injustice Square, see the Breonna Taylor Memorial, go to the park, talk to people. You'll learn so much. And I really think Rux has helped me with the language and the energy and the chapaz to be able to do that. So yeah.
And I'll try to keep it short. One thing I would just say, if like you, as Richard said, go download some of the stuff and read it, go look at the Facebook page, watch some videos. I think people will learn a lot about the work and how it's done by getting engaged with Rux. And I would even, just invite people, like if you have never been, there are a lot of Rux people now across the state. We have events that aren't just for the cohort when times are different. And I would encourage people to come. I think, critiquing individual people or critiquing work or critiquing a place is very, very important. And I would also argue that it is easier than building a different future. And to put solutions on the table and actually create, like scaffold them up and get them from a vision to reality. And so I would just really encourage people to, if you've got questions, if you have critiques, like we want those, and we want to make Rux even better than it is now. And that's because we believe in what's possible in this state, and we believe in the people in this state. So come be a part of what we're up to.
All right, thank you all so much. So good to be in community with you today and for all you shared. I am going to go back to Tallery's question that she shared at the beginning. And I also just want to thank the people who've tuned in today and who donated. We are sharing all of the donations with La Casita Center, so thank you if you're able to share today. So let me go to Tallery's question, which is, Savannah, I'm going to put this to you, but what does the future of the Kentucky Rural-Urban Exchange look like?
Well, as Ada said, we hope that it looks like you are there, all of you viewers. We hope to do this work with you, either in the cohort or as supporters. Don't be shy. But there's also some exciting developments outside of Kentucky. We've been working with a group of Minnesotans for the past year to apply what we've learned here to their context, and they are finishing up a year-long learning exchange, looking to launch a Minnesota Rux next year. We're talking to other states about the potential of doing that there as well. And we're always looking for ways to extend just parts of this framework to other contexts. So, there's a lot of value to just doing an event with these values. There's a lot of value in just using the story circle format that's really core to our practice that we learned from folks at Apple Shop. So we can help connect you all to those kinds of practices as well and help you bring them into your boardroom or your theater. And then lastly, I'll just say that we're always developing this work. It's always changing and shifting. And we always seek new leadership to help steward that. All of us are in a transitional moment that, you know, is it on different timelines, but we're very interested in transitioning founding leadership so that more Kentuckians can be a part of shaping this. So we hope to see you there. Oh, I should
That's
say
great. Oh no.
that we will hopefully have applications open again for RECs in the spring of 2021. Normally they go live in March. So cross your fingers and maybe we'll see you in person next year.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you all. We will be back with Unscripted next week, 4 o'clock Wednesday. All right, thanks everybody.